We have a world where we live where we always think that we need to hold on to things forever. But I recognize that there's a version of me that in my world that I'd created in my early 30s, I needed to let certain parts of myself die because I now understand it to be my soul, was coming for something more meaningful. A new paradigm leader is coming to create something more than just money. Money might be a part of it, but it may not even be a part of it. And this initiation piece is stepping away in the severance phase and surrounding yourself in a container or a space where you're like, okay, what do I really need to let go of? What do I need to let die so that I can create space for something new?
And I mean, that's the process, right? You got to figure it out. It's like the decluttering. You've got to clear stuff out so that new things can grow and emerge. And like this process of identifying what's going to die, that's so powerful. But how the heck do we do it? How do we figure out what needs to go? What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Fathers, Sons, Brothers podcast. This is your co-host, Matt Dazzi, here with Gareth Pickering. And in this episode, we are going to give you the framework you need to step into the new paradigm of leadership. I'm talking about how do you access the magic? How do you step away from your current circles? And how do you set up a framework and integrate it into your world so that you can be the leader you want to be? I'm here with Gareth, coming from Guatemala. Gareth, how are you today?
Happy New Year, dude. The last time we did a post game, I was in Peru, and we've had a little break since then, but it feels so good to be back here. And yeah, excited to dive into today's topic around integrated leadership. And it sort of feels timeless with everything moving in the world at the moment around like geopolitics. And yeah, it just feels like there's a lot of unsettledness in the world.
Yeah, we had a changing of the guard of world leaders, I guess, yesterday with Trump coming into office. And yeah, I'm still not clear where I stand with that, but I realize that when I check in with my brothers in the States, and it's quite a polarized environment that people are swimming in right now. I'm glad I'm coming to you from Spain and not having to deal with those conversations.
Well, we've offline had many conversations about the political circus, and I know it's been a world that you've at times been really involved in. Like, and I know there's a lot of energy that hooks us into these global narratives and how important we think those are. And I think the polarizing world at the moment is I know and love people that think Trump being in power is the best thing that's going to save the world, and then I have other people that I love and respect that are like, this is the worst thing ever. And like you, I'm sort of teeing it up to focusing on the things that I can control. I've never really been deep into geopolitics, so it's not such a big thing for me, but I'm not disconnected from what's moving in the world. And I think the conversation we want to have today around leadership is really like there seems to be no one, even those that are happy that Trump's in, would necessarily have chosen him if they could have chosen the best possible person to be a leader. It's like the best of a bad choice, you know? And I think, yeah, how do we generally shift what we want to see in our leaders? And that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah, bro, I love it. And how do we be leaders in our own life as well, right? Like we're not leaders of the free world. We're not presidents of countries, but we do serve a role in our lives to lead our families, to be pillars in our community, to be leaders in our business. And I think, the elements of the mature leader and this new paradigm of leadership that we're going to drop into applies to all of our lives wherever we're at as men walking our path. And yeah, amped to get into it, bro.
There's something as well, which is I think someone said this a few years ago. Is like our politicians and our leaders of the world are at some level a reflection of us. Like collectively, if we have given our power away, or we're not standing as leaders in our own lives, or we don't feel confident enough, we're like, oh, this is beyond me. I'm going to give this to somebody else to do. Collectively, if we're in that space and we don't know quite what else to do, or we're collectively all sitting vibrating with a frequency of like greed, consumption, capitalism as a theme in our lives, I think it makes sense that we're going to see that in our leaders. And so, where I sometimes feel powerless of like, oh, fuck, how do we possibly change the current circus that we see in our global leaders? And sometimes feel powerless, like you said, it's like, okay, what can I do? Yes, I want to show up as a leader in my own life. I want to see where am I leaking energy? Where am I not standing in my own power? Where am I not taking responsibility for my leadership in my own life, and trusting that that's what I can change, and showing up as a way to support others to do the same. And then eventually it will be reflected in our leaders.
Yeah, and realizing the leaders that we follow, like, whether we're part of a culture of a nation or a culture of a community, like, we are choosing who we spend our time with. We are choosing whose content we consume and who we look up to, and like those are the choices we can make as well. Who are we engaging with? What type of leadership style resonates with us? And as we think about our own way, like, having those role models is important. I don't know.
Share some of the places where you've experienced, let's say, immature leadership in the past, where you've been in a corporate environment where you have experienced leadership that hasn't always felt healthy, and how that played out in your world.
Man, when I was an investment banker, I was working for some extremely powerful leaders who, had a goal of making a shit ton of money. And they were very powerful and strong at cultivating young minds like my own to follow in the footsteps necessary to make that happen. And they did that through inspirational language, through demonstrating uh, how to hold power and wield power in a way that I can now see was quite unhealthy. But I was so drunk with it because I wanted what they were demonstrating to have. And it's sort of like really understanding and knowing what you're calling into the world is an important piece uh, of not falling victim to those leaders who have the wrong intentions, because I can look back at that now and be like, yeah, these aren't the type of individuals I would follow as the version of me today. But the 21-year-old version of me was all about it and was all in for whatever opportunities they were presenting to me to follow. And yeah, I can see that happens, especially in investment banking, and I can see it happen in other industries as well. You came from some toxic corporate environments as well. What did the leadership look like there?
You know, I had similar spaces. I think what's a theme in what you shared there, and it's definitely been a theme in my life and the world that I grew up in, was, I would just say, an over identification of materialism or profit, meaning that money was the most important thing for me. And so anybody that felt like they were making more money than me would probably have been idealized in some version of me. And that was definitely a focus for me. And I often, very often in my younger years, maybe like you said, the younger version of me made decisions based purely on money. Like if somebody came to me with a business opportunity, I would assess that opportunity based on its ability to make profit. And it was the guiding factor. That was the thing. It was like majorly weighted around money. And yeah, I've subsequently realized that I've made a lot of money, and it's not just about money. And in fact, I think that's probably some of the challenge that we see in unhealthy leadership at the moment, especially in the masculine, which is like, it's just about money. And I know some people have concerns that Trump, for example, is overly identified with making money and the natural resources on the planet. And so again, I think if I had to step back 10 years, that would have made sense to me. It would be like, fuck, he's the leader we need, just continually more and more money. But it's like, I don't know that that's necessarily true anymore. I realize in my own life, more and more money doesn't make me happier. Yes, I want to make an impact. Yes, the access to resources and money does give me the ability to make a bigger impact and to show up more fully, to build a bigger team, to create a bigger platform, which is what we're doing. But I think my journey in my own integration of myself has been recognizing that money is just one part of it. I want to be known for creating a legacy that is beyond just financial welfare.
And you've taken the steps now to surround yourself with people who have that same vision. Back when we were stuck in these industries, we were hanging out with people who had these similar mindsets of, let's get more money, let's have more success, let's get more, more, more. And so that sort of drove our behavior. And part of what we're going to be diving into today is this idea of leadership involves you kind of stepping away from the echo chamber that we build around ourselves in society and finding these new circles, these new groups of men who have the same or similar goals and ideas of how the world should be, so that we can craft our leadership style in that environment rather than the one that we might be stuck in. What do
Yeah,
you think
it's
about that?
there's yeah, we've been talking about this these three phases of leadership, and I think for those listening to this, this is really potentially going to be for you if you feel like you have been in a role where you've been successful. You've done all the things that society has said this is what you need to do to make it as a man. And so maybe you've got a family and you've made an impact in the world and you've been through some hard knocks and you've learned some life lessons, and maybe you've got a bank account full of cash and you're realizing as you look ahead to the second chapter of your life, what really is meaningful? What does real leadership mean to me? And I think what Matt's talking about in the first phase that I'll share with you now around leadership is, in order for you to have a different perspective, you need to remove yourself from the space that has a lot of legacy stories and energy. And this has been true for Matt and myself, meaning he needed to remove himself from the investment banking world in order for him to be able to gain the perspective of what else was available to him. Because in that world, you were only surrounded by people that were focused on profit, in your example. In mine, it was also just around making money. But if I didn't remove myself from that environment, I was continually surrounded by the same people. And much like a plant is a function of the health of its environment, if you don't change the environment around you, it's really difficult to be able to see any new possible paradigm without removing yourself. You can't read the label from the inside of the bottle. And so, this first phase of stepping into becoming a new paradigm leader is to recognize this part that you cannot see what is continually around you unless you consciously remove yourself. And we call this severance. It's like genuinely cutting away from your current paradigm of leadership, which is your current circles. And in the case of large businesses, for the leader that wants to be a new paradigm leader, it requires you stepping out of that frame in order to be able to see a different perspective, in order for you to be able to even recognize that something else can exist. Because had I not left Johannesburg and the world and the circles and the environment that I was in, it would have been impossible to be able to see some of the other paths that were available to me without actually doing that.
I want to take a quick pause, Gareth, and we keep using this term new paradigm leader. Can we dive into that real quick and define what that is as opposed to, say, the old paradigm leader?
Hmm. I've been holding this as a recognition that we started this conversation with, which is there's been for me, a sense of this is the way it's always been. It's always just been like we've got to continually take more and more resources from the planet. We've got to continually focus more and more on profit. And those are the most important things. And for me, that feels like the old paradigm. That feels like an immature expression of masculinity where it's anchored in this place of like, everybody is competing with everybody else. If we have another business that does something similar to us, they're eating our market share. And it's, for me, based in a paradigm of scarcity, meaning that there's not enough on this planet for all of us. And if Matt has a business that does advertising and I've got a business that does advertising, it's a dog eat dog world and we've got to continually compete against one another. I believe that's an old paradigm of leadership. What we've been talking about on this podcast, and we continually communicate inside our community as we want to bring a new paradigm of leadership in, it's really anchored in a place of collaboration, of how do we work together. There's more than enough resources on this planet, as long as we come from a place of recognizing that, you know what, why do you want to have 10 houses, or why do you need to have 25 million in the bank or be a billionaire? Like, that may be your thing, but you could also have a beautiful, happy life with a slightly different paradigm or a slightly different story, bringing something meaningful to the world that makes you enough money to live and have a beautiful life to do all the things that you want. But it's based in this place of there is enough and let's work together. And I think the new paradigm of leadership is anchored in this principle of like, let's work together. Let's let go of the part of us that believes that we're always competing with one another and that we live in a world of scarcity, as in there's not enough resources. We need to eke out our own little place. I think those are the challenges that we see in our old paradigm of leadership. And I think a new paradigm of leadership is anchored in a lot of the principles that we talk about inside the fathers, sons, brothers community, and is a paradigm of the men's work resurgence that we're seeing around the world, which is like, hey, as men, we don't have to sit and fight against one another and continually compete. Why don't we sit around the same fire and see how we can pool our resources and our skills to bring something more wholesome and probably um, I would say, not better to the world, but like a more diverse offering by working together rather than competing against one another? That's a great question. Thanks, dude.
Yeah, man, collaboration over competition, mastermind principle. People who are already doing the work that we're doing. Yeah, like the old version of me would look at how we can crush them or compete with them, and now we meet other people in the space, and it's like, bro, love what you're doing. How do we work together? And it's
Exactly.
yeah, it creates such a
I'd
such a more powerful impact. It's more joyful to be in a space that's that way.
I also want to
Anyway,
share,
thank you for addressing
there's
that.
something there's something in what's also a I would say like a principle inside the father, sons, brothers community, which is also why we're called father, sons, brothers. And I think the old paradigm of leadership is sort of this lone wolf mentality, which is like men that get into the middle age of life, let's call it the king stage, sort of early 30s till the sort of 50s, middle 50s, before you move into the sage or the elder area. The old paradigm of leadership is like the youngsters don't know anything. The old people are like out of their wits already or no longer relevant to us. And what we've been holding as a new paradigm is like, no, that's not true. At each generation, we have gifts for one another, meaning there's something really energetic and youthful and exciting about connecting with a 20-year-old man who's excited and exuberant about the changes and is connected to a world that I, at the moment, am perhaps a little bit separate from. So why don't I connect with those people, bring them into my world, and have them as part of our community and our tribe to be able to harness the gifts that come from youthfulness, while at the same time Matt and I are both in the king stage of our lives, like in this place of really showing up in leadership, harnessing our gifts, building. Whereas my dad and your dad are more in the elder stage. We need to create a space where we can sit at the feet of our elders and be like, what are we missing? Like, what can we learn from you on this path? And I think that's also a function of new paradigm leadership, of like recognizing there are gifts for us at each of these levels. And our elders are carrying wisdom that if we let them go before we tap into that, we're letting go of some really important lessons that we're probably going to have to go and repeat and learn. And that seems like the long route. Why don't we just learn from them? They've already walked this path. And at the same time, when we do that, we also create a space for them to feel necessary, to feel useful. Because of what I see in the corporate world is men move through their lives. They have a lot of importance in the king phase of their life as a corporate executive. They turn 65, and from one day to the next, they go from being really important to having no purpose and not knowing what to do. They don't know how to be at home with their wives, and they don't quite know what they're supposed to be doing with their lives, and that can lead to a lot of depression and feeling isolated, and they actually have a lot of gifts to bring. And so one of our roles is also to create spaces where we can bring those men into our community as well, and that also sort of creates a piece of the new paradigm leadership for me. Hey, FSB crew, a quick message to say 97% of you who watch or consume this podcast are not subscribed. Subscribing to the show really supports us to be able to grow and reach more people, as well as include and improve the quality and caliber of guests that we have on this show. Our goal is to get this number down to 70%. And so if you have ever received any value from the content and conversations on this podcast, please consider subscribing. It really supports us and the work that we're doing. Now, back to the show.
Well, thank you for addressing that. And yeah, now that we've anchored that in, phase one, getting severance.
Stepping out of the old. Yeah. So phase one, stepping out of the old, creating a space from your current environment to realize that until you do that, you're not going to be able to see a new path. Phase two is really what we call initiation. This is the step of the journey where it's like, how do I recognize that something needs to die? We have a world where we live where we always think that we need to hold on to things forever. But I recognize that there's a version of me that in my world that I'd created in my early 30s, I needed to let certain parts of myself die because I now understand it to be my soul, was coming for something more meaningful. A new paradigm leader is coming to create something more than just money. Money might be a part of it, but it may not even be a part of it. And this initiation piece is stepping away in the severance phase and surrounding yourself in a container or a space where you're like, okay, what do I really need to let go of? What do I need to let die so that I can create space for something new?
And I mean, that's the process, right? You got to figure it out. It's like the decluttering. You've got to clear stuff out so that new things can grow and emerge. And like this process of identifying what's going to die, that's so powerful. But how the heck do we do it? How do we figure out what needs to go in our world so that we can be these leaders?
That's a great question. Like I think the nature of this journey is that you don't know. This is the fucking point of it. You don't get to know what this is. And the point of the hero's journey is if you're sitting listening to this podcast and you're like, I feel like there's something more that I need to bring, but I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You need to actually have the courage to step away and to step into the not knowing in order for this to reveal. The severance is the first part so that you can create the space. How to know what needs to go requires you being in the not knowing for a while. It's inherently part of the journey to recognize that you need to fucking have no idea for a while. And there are ways to do it. And, we've got a retreat coming up in March called the Integrated Leader, where this is going to be part of the process. But part of this is for us to trust in something perhaps bigger than ourselves. The hero that leaves on the hero's journey, if you know Joseph Campbell's work around the hero's journey, you don't get to know the path when you fucking step away from home. When I left Johannesburg to go on my own version of the hero's journey after hitting a bottom where I felt depressed and lost and spiraling in addiction, I had no idea where I was going. But you have to take
Right.
that first step. And I think that's inherently part of the process. Now, when you remove yourself from the stories, from the daily routines and the ongoing interruptions that we have and the legacy relationships that we have in the world, being a father, being a businessman, showing up for your team, you can step away. There is a place where I think the answer to your question is listen. What needs to die? Just sit still for a moment, turn off your phone for a couple of days, do some journaling, and just listen what needs to come through, because most of us are so distracted in our daily lives. There's not a space for listening. There's too many interruptions of current things, which doesn't create the space to create that awareness.
Yeah, and that's a part of stepping away, right? It's like managing your digital world, managing all the noise that takes place, getting out of those toxic conversations, and just listening. Yeah, that feels right.
Yeah, I think there's also a part of this initiation journey which includes other elements. I think there's a solo component of this journey, but I also think that there's a space of getting connected with others that have perhaps been through this journey before. Surrounding yourself with others who are going to ask the right questions or mirror back certain things to you. Like, as you start to tune into what is it that I don't actually fucking love in my life, what's not bringing me joy, what feels like an energy drain, you're soon going to be recognizing and journaling on certain things that you're going to be like, you know what, this relationship, for example, isn't my highest joy at the moment, or this particular location that I've chosen to live in, or this friendship circle, or this group, or this job, or whatever those things are, those are going to start to come out. And the challenging part about this journey, this stepping into a new paradigm of leadership, is once you've seen those things, you can't unsee them. It's not like
Right.
you can then go back to your life and be like, here's this really shitty relationship that I have with my brother-in-law that I keep doing. It doesn't mean that you have to go back and burn all your relationships, but it is going to require you to show up and be like, okay, my truth is to actually hold some boundaries here, or perhaps to let go of this relationship, or perhaps to step into something new. But inherently part of that journey is to recognize what are the things that are not serving me, and what does feel like it serves me. What do I want to double down on? What does bring me joy? Because I think that's inherently part of this initiation journey.
Yeah, well, that's one of the indicators, right? Like if you're having one of those things that you see and you can't unsee, that's one of the pieces of the puzzle of finding those things that you need to let go of. Like that's one of the indicators right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's the second phase. The second phase is really recognizing that you need to go through some sort of initiation that's been facilitated in a space that's free from your current distractions, in order to create the spaciousness to see two things: what needs to be let go of, and what am I genuinely calling in.
Nice one. Phase 3. Bring it.
Phase three is the integration. How do I return back? This is like the returning of the hero's journey. You go on this
Yes.
amazing adventure, you go out into the world, you learn all these parts and you learn all these skills. The magic is not to just keep journeying and continually on your personal growth path. It's like, how do I return home with this magic and bring it back to my own community and to my own family and to my own life as the new integrated leader, or as the new paradigm leader? And yeah, that requires two things. It requires a plan, whatever that looks like, some sort of blueprint that's like, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on now. And it requires, actually, it's three things, and it's the same three S's that we talk about inside our community, which is a plan is the system so that you know where you're headed. The second is the self awareness to track yourself on this plan. And then the third is support, which is recognizing that when you step back into your old world with your old patterns and your old stories and your old friends and your old families and your old relationships, there's going to be a bit of tension between the new version of you and the old version of you and the legacy relationships that you have. And how do you stay aligned to this new path so that you can continue to bring it? And that support for us as new paradigm leaders looks like inside the Father, Sons, Brothers community, the tribe of men that we sit with every single month in our tribe gathering, or the King Circle, which is like, hey, I'm having a hard time bringing my new mission to the world because I've got friends who are not ready to do this work. And how do I do this? The support group that you create around you is a function of this third phase of integration. So having a system, which is your plan of what you want to bring. This means after going through the severance, you left your old world, you went on your hero's journey, you had the initiation, you recognize what needed to die, you go through a process of letting those go, you recognize what's yours to do now in this part of your life, you come back, and then when you get stuck, who do I turn to? How do I show up as this new integrated leader? And I think that is to do with surrounding yourself with new paradigm leaders as well, who are going through their own struggles and having similar challenges to you as they bring their magic to the world. And that's essentially what we're building inside the Father, Sons, Brothers community. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. And when I sit around the King Circle and I hear other brothers sharing elements of their journey, the number of things that are going on in other men's lives that resonate with me, that make me say aha and make me see those things that I can't unsee in my own world, it takes place in those interactions. It takes place in that container that's safe, that allows us to express ourselves without judgment, without consequence, and to be heard as we speak our truth. And as being one of the ones listening, like we're only sharing, when it's our turn to share, being one of those ones listening, that's when the alarm bells for me go off so frequently, highlighting the things that I can change, that I'm ready to let go of, that I need to integrate into my world to continue to step forward on my path. Super powerful.
Yeah, what you're touching on there is what we say inside men's work, which is that your work is my work and my work is your work. When I sit in a men's circle, even when I'm holding the circle, when Matt shares something that's a theme for him in his relationship, in his money game, in his power struggles, in his community, there's always a theme that's like, I have that as well, or I have a similar version of that. And just by hearing somebody else speak about it, it creates a space for me to be able to feel less like I'm holding that part on my own. And that single piece is the reason why the technology of men's work is so powerful. And I think we've said before on this podcast that men's work is today where meditation and yoga were 30 years ago. The most successful leaders in Silicon Valley at the moment now almost all have a meditation practice because they understand that meditation is like decluttering for the mind, and your mind is the one creating the stories. So if you want to be a more clear and calm leader that has the ability to track their stories, then you would have a meditation practice. It flows from there, and the science is starting to prove this. In a few years' time, the most successful leaders are going to be those that intentionally create spaces for themselves outside of their paradigm of just being in the boardroom and being like, these are 10 or 15 men that I love and trust that I'm going to sit in a circle with and put myself out there to say, you know what, tell me what I can't see. Where are my actions not lining up with the words or the mission that I tell you that I want to serve? And I'm going to say to you, Matt, your language around money this week in your share pointed to a place of scarcity, or you're not seeing this. And Gareth, you don't see these things. Because without that, the old paradigm of leader is like, I'm in charge, everybody will listen to me, and I know exactly what I've got right. Great. Most of us do know what we're doing, and we do know what we're supposed to be doing. And we've spoken about this. If anybody doesn't think they have a shadow, that's a massive red flag for me. And
Right.
if we all recognize that we have a shadow because we all are inherently wounded as a function of the world that we've born into, how do we understand and identify those wounds and track them so that we can show up as the integrated leader, recognizing that we're going to have shadow patterns that are going to run, stories that are based in scarcity or not enough, or still perhaps in competition, and surround yourself with a group of men that really trust and support you to track and identify those shadows, is the role of the new integrated leader.
Right, because you can't see your shadows. That's what makes them shadows. And if you can
Uh-huh.
recognize that we all have them, and I can acknowledge that I have mine, I need a you. I need the other 15 men in the circle who can help point those out to me and do so in a way that allows me to hear it, to integrate it, and to start doing the work to change it, to see that pattern more clearly and to install a new one. And yeah, it's magic. It's magic.
So those are the three frames and the three elements of what's required to step from your current role of leadership into this new paradigm of being a leader. Severance, stepping away from your current routines and responsibilities. And that can look like a retreat like we have at the end of March. I'll speak to that in a second. That can also look like just stepping into a new space. We have a free monthly men's circle called the King Circle, where even if you've never been in a men's circle before, you're welcome to come and sit in that circle. You'll have the opportunity to share what's alive for you, whether it's in relationship, in your money game, in some community challenges, whatever it feels like as a theme for you. You'll have a space to be able to share, but you'll also have a space to be able to witness the other men speaking about what's genuinely alive for them. It's a safe and confidential space where everything you share in the space is stays inside that sealed container and is transmuted inside that container. So step away from your existing spaces. Put yourself in a place to go through initiation where you consciously slow down to be able to listen, stop the current routines and the current legacy distractions and patterns of life that are part of the Western life at the moment. You know, picking up kids in the morning, breakfast, kiss your wife quickly, date night as often as you can. But like, it just feels like until you can slow down and just genuinely listen, it's going to be impossible to see what's not bringing you joy. And then ultimately, what is my pattern? What are my unique gifts to bring through this initiation process that I want to show up in the world for? And then installing the support. That's the ongoing support as you integrate this new role of integrated leadership back into your life. And as Matt said at the beginning of this, your integrated leadership journey starts within. It will eventually be reflected out as you show up as an integrated leader in your relationships and your family, and then in your work, and then in the world. But it really starts with this integrated journey of reconnecting with these parts of yourself within, coming into greater alignment, and then moving out into the world from this more integrated place.
I love it.
Yep.
Well, King Circles, those take place on the last Sunday of every month. You can go to our website, fathersonsbrothers.com, and get registered for any one of those coming up. And Gareth, as you said, we've got an integrated leader retreat taking place in Guatemala. Break it down.
6 years ago, Matt and I came to a festival on the Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, and something truly magical happened for both of us at that experience. You know, we'd both been moving around quite a bit, and we both had decided that we wanted to create a space to slow down. And we decided that we were going to rent a place on the lake long term for about 6 months and just settle down. And we really wanted to deep dive into our journey of creating men's spaces. And we were going to set up a studio, and we put an offer in on a house, which actually didn't happen, but something energetically shifted. And for the last 6 years, I've been living full time on Lake Atitlan here in Guatemala. And at various times, Matt's come in and out through my life. He spent a good few months living here. He now lives in Spain. But really, this is a transient slash vortex of healing. There's quite a lot of people coming through the space that are seekers, that are looking for leveling up their life, whether it be through meditation practices or sound journeys or cacao ceremonies or those types of things. And it really feels like we're holding a point for men's work inside this community. And this is really an opportunity for us to share the work that we've been creating specifically around this topic of leadership. And we've rented an amazing villa in San Marcos in Lake Atitlan. And for us, it feels like an opportunity to share the magic and the healing of not only men's work and this technology that we've been speaking about on this podcast, but also the land that has held and supported us so much on our own individual journeys. You know, both Matt and I have done a couple of different ISTA trainings here on Lake Atitlan, super powerful week-long retreats that have integrated so much of my life force mastery and my desires and communication frameworks. And a lot of that is interwoven into our work. But yeah, the opportunity for us to create a retreat for men here in Guatemala is, it feels like giving back. It feels like creating an opening for other men that are on this journey of wanting to become an integrated leader over these 5 days by going through this process. Severance, you step away from your life in Johannesburg or Cape Town or New York City where you are and give yourself the gift of showing up for something completely new, to turn your phone off for 5 days and just to be held in a space and facilitated away from the routines that are the hustle and bustle of your daily life. We're going to be facilitating a process for you to go through, and to go through this initiation. There's going to be a plant medicine ceremony with a really beautiful cactus called San Pedro. I've journeyed with it before. Super amazing, super beautiful. This is going to be part of your journey, including some spaciousness, this chance to listen. Remember how we said, until you can really listen, it's hard to know what's wanting to come through you. So there's actually going to be quite a lot of spaciousness in this retreat for you to ask some important questions about what needs to die, what I need to let go of, and celebrate that. As painful as it might feel, as dramatic as a death might feel, it's an important part of growth is the death of the things that are no longer serving you. And then getting the plan that you can take back for the third phase of integration. How do you take this back into your life in New York City and be the leader in the world that you want to be with this new plan, while continually surrounded by this group of men that are going to be lifelong friends because you've been through this powerful initiation with you. So the integrated leader is happening from the 24th until the 29th of March, Lake Atitlan, Guatemala. Super easy to get here from New York. So from the States, it's like a direct flight for most destinations in the States, if not one short stop. And yeah, we're excited to host you. We've got space for another 6 men to join us, and then we will be sold out. And yeah, I'm excited to be sharing it. And Matt, is there any progress on your side with regards to whether you can make it, or are you still a maybe?
I am I'm blessed with free flights, and so my necessity to plan far in advance is not needed. So at this point, I'm still a strong maybe. And yeah, looking forward to getting back to the lake, though. I mean, just to weigh in also, it's one of those energetic spaces in the world where magic takes place, where, people come together and are gravitated to there and stay there for a long period of time because of some magical force that keeps them there. It's one of these energy centers of the world, and it's in those spaces that true transformation can really take place. And that's why we've chosen it as a location for this retreat. And yeah, it's going to be one of those incredible moments in your life when you make it there and transform alongside of other brothers doing the same. So if you're listening out there, book your ticket.
We will put all of the details for the integrated leader as well as the King Circle that Matt spoke about in the show notes for this episode. If you are vibing with the content that you hear on this podcast, whether you're consuming this on YouTube or wherever you consume podcasts, do us a favor. Please write us a review and share this content with another integrated leader, whether they're able to join us in Guatemala or not. But yeah, your support of the show really is helping us spread this important technology of men's work throughout the world. We believe that healing the masculine, both internally, is going to be reflected into our external world. So yeah, your support, whether it be joining a King Circle to show up directly for yourself, but if you're in a female body and you share this with a husband or a partner or a son, please feel free to share this content with them. It really does support the show.
Well, thank you all for listening to the end of this podcast.
Matt, thanks for showing up, bro. Good to do this again. And we'll be back next week with another hot topic on our weekly post game. And until then, thanks for checking in.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.